Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We are excited to talk through a topic that I think is relevant for anyone and everyone in the nonprofit sector. I would think we would be hard pressed to find a nonprofit that does not rely on the generosity of their community to help further their missions. So with that, I would pose the question, if you are not in any sort of focused fundraising effort, the question is why? Right? Why are we not? Oftentimes, the answer is we are crippled by that overwhelming uncertainty of where to start. We know that there's work to be done, but we have just absolutely no idea where to start. And if you feel that way, you are not alone. I think we've all felt that way a time or two. And even the most seasoned fundraising professionals have that feeling from time to time. So as we move into the first slide, I want us to be thinking about moving from assessment to action and how the benefits of a feasibility study or opportunity assessment can help your nonprofit to do just that. So next slide, please, Trish. I wanted to start with posing a couple of scenarios. The first one being, if you're planning a major campaign, right? If you're planning a major campaign, you should be thinking about doing some sort of an assessment. I'm going to use feasibility study and opportunity assessment a bit interchangeably as we move through this material. In a couple of slides, I've got sort of the definition that we're going to be using of both, but then from henceforth, we will probably refer to them as feasibility studies. But if you're planning a major campaign, it's important to conduct an assessment of a particular project, right? Whatever that is that you are looking to do before investing a whole lot of time and energy into starting that project. If you do not assess the feasibility of that, the opportunities that are out there, you may make some mistakes along the way that could cost you and your organization a lot of money and a lot of time and not the desired outcome that you hope to have, right? You need to make sure that you're going to reach your fundraising campaign goal and even sometimes determine what that goal should be in the first place. Oftentimes, when we're setting forth with a project, we know the cost of that project and we know it is not possible without the philanthropic support of our communities. But sometimes we know that we're going to have to put some of our own funds as an organization into said project, or we know that we have a bunch of different projects, but we don't really know which one we might go forward with first because they're all high priorities. And a feasibility study or opportunity assessment can help us determine what our goal should be to start with, right? Because we want to set ourselves up for success. The very worst thing that we can do is go forth and not set ourselves up to actually complete and achieve what we set out to do, because that takes a lot of time and effort to unwind and to refocus and remove forward. So if you're stalled in the middle of a campaign, or you're not in any sort of a fundraising effort, an opportunity assessment or a feasibility study can help you uncover opportunities that you may not even know exist, and help to set that roadmap forward for optimal success. We know oftentimes that by talking to the people in our communities, we can uncover opportunities in connection with people that we didn't know existed because we were so busy looking to the future or staying in the present that we never stopped to take the time to ask people what they thought. It's a very, very important part of the process, and we'll get into those details in a minute. Secondly, it's going to help engage your constituencies and expand your networks, right? Again, if we are not in a focused effort, it becomes extremely challenging to pick up the phone and say, hey, let's go talk about this now. Well, why now versus yesterday, tomorrow? Why now? Why should I care? Why should I take the time as a person in your community to care or think about it now, right? But if we're having a feasibility study or an opportunity assessment, it makes it that much easier to pick up the phone and say, gosh, I know we haven't talked in years, but guess what? We're doing something. We want to tell you about it. We want to get your thoughts, right? So if you are not in a focused effort, or if you are in the middle of an effort and you have found yourself with needing new people to talk to, these can all be great opportunities for you. So let's take a step back once and look at feasibility studies and opportunity assessments and really sort of what that means. We use these terms a lot because it's a lot in our line of work, but oftentimes this can be just what you're looking for, but you didn't even know what it was called or where to start with, right? So a feasibility study, really and truly in the nonprofit world, we're looking at a detailed analysis for a proposed project or fundraising campaign to determine how much can be raised in donations, right? And we ask the questions to determine those amounts so that we can set ourselves up for success. What initiatives a donor base would support? How many times have we thought we had the perfect project and nobody really was caring about that, but they cared about something else that we had going on? So it can help us make sure that our donor base is in support and interested in the effort that we're about to embark on. And who to solicit for gifts to support the project, right? We know that we need supporters. So by asking people if they're interested and if they know of others who may be interested, we are able to point in the right direction to talk to people about gifts for support of our project through a feasibility study. Again, I said the words feasibility study and opportunity assessment, we may use them somewhat interchangeably in this conversation, but if you sort of look at them as two individual things, an opportunity assessment is going to be very, very similar, but oftentimes this is where the focus is on uncovering the opportunities. We're a little bit more flexible on what our project might look like, and helping us to expand our networks. Again, that's when we're mid-campaign and we find ourselves stalled. An opportunity assessment can be very effective in helping us take that next layer of individuals and those networks of people who may be 2 and 3 people removed from our closest inner circle. So in expanding our networks and building those relationships to grow support for a more focused fundraising effort. With that, I would love to talk a little bit about what some of the benefits are of a feasibility study. So first of all, and I kind of mentioned this and alluded to this in the very beginning, it's going to help us identify potential challenges and risks early on. Does not mean that if there's a challenge, we're not up for the challenge. But if we know about the challenge, we can prepare for it, we can plan for it, we can message for it, and we can set ourselves up to accomplish whatever we're looking to accomplish despite of the challenge, and utilize our strengths to move forward with that. So it's a very important thing to uncover in this process. If there are challenges, what are they? How do we overcome them, right? Next, it can help us ensure that the project aligns with the organization's mission and values. We have to make sure that everything that we're doing has a purpose, right? And we should have a strong mission and values as an organization, and we should be able to convey that to the community, and they should understand that. Through a feasibility study, we're able to have those conversations, and we're able to make sure that our project is supporting that and that growth for the community. Because it's not about asking the community to support us as an organization. We've identified this need that exists in our community, that we as this nonprofit supporting you community are in a position to serve, but we need your help to move forward with it, and making sure that it is true to our mission and our values as we move forward, and that makes sense and everyone understands it and can get behind it is important. Next, we are looking to gather data and insights to inform our decision making, right? Again, it does not mean that we have to always change our course of action, but if we are hearing from those people who are going to be supporting us that there's a challenge or that there is not enough support for some certain piece of ours, we have to ask the question. So the data that we get that says these people believe XYZ, that can inform our decision making as we move forward. And it's very important to have those conversations early on so we set ourselves up for that trajectory for success. We can build consensus and buy-in among stakeholders and donors, right? If it's something they never thought about, and we go forth into the community and people know that they're associated with our organization and we never took the time to talk to them about it, how bought in are they going to be? If we prepare our inner circles of people, if we prepare the way by having the conversations about what it is that we're looking to achieve, we're going to build some consensus. People are going to have a little bit more ownership as stakeholders in our organization, and they're going to be able to help us, help be that mouthpiece out in the community to support our efforts. We can increase the likelihood of success and reduce the risk of failure. I'm pretty sure everyone in this room would like to set themselves up for success instead of failure. Um, it is 100 times easier to know our information from the get-go, have that path forward for a successful effort, and reduce that risk of failure. If there are roadblocks that we're going to see, if we know about them, we know how to navigate them, and we can continue that upward trajectory of growth and success so that we can have that transformational impact on our communities. We can align our strategies and supporting actions as needed to implement a successful effort, right? If we have strategies that are going to help us achieve our objectives and we set up our roadmap with activities and actions in order to implement success, we are going to be much more successful than if we just say, hey, let's go start talking to people and see if they might be interested in supporting us. We've got to have a plan, right? And we've got to utilize our strategic plan and our vision to help us move forward. And the feasibility study and opportunity assessment process can help with that. And last but definitely not least, we can define concrete recommendations for early action to create and maintain positive momentum. We know that moving straight out of a feasibility study, we have the attention of our community. And if we have those concrete recommendations to inspire action right away, people see that action. The momentum is great, right? And people want to be a part of a winning team. So if we spoke with them about something and we talk to them immediately after and we inspire action and movement, we are going to set ourselves up for a successful effort. With that, I'd like to hand it over to Jake to continue the conversation.
Excellent. We want to talk through specific outcomes. We've kind of, chunked through a little bit some of the things that, big picture stuff and like overall what we're kind of looking for and why organizations choose to do this. But there's some specific deliverables and outcomes. And a lot of times we want to check some of these boxes. A lot of times it's helpful to check all of them. So if you've gone through this process or about to go through this process, here's kind of what you can expect on the other end from feasibility studies / opportunity assessments, depending on what it is. First, we have just the overall fundraising goal. What is the floor and what is the ceiling for what we can raise? Now, as we go through our silent phase of our campaign, we know we can dial that goal in even further, but we can get pretty close in terms of, hey, I think if everything goes well, all of the major gifts fall that we expect, everyone that we've identified at the 6 or 7 figure level comes through, it's going to be about in this range, because we know that looking at major gifts is going to be the biggest and easiest determining factor of where that final total ends up. If we got an additional 1,000 annual gifts, still doesn't affect our overall total as much as 1 or 2 major gifts will. So being able to determine that and focus on that area really helps us get what is our floor, what is our ceiling. And then as we have those initial conversations over the first even year and a half, sometimes can take that long, we can get that final number dialed in before we actually go public and announce that goal with the big campaign thermometer and everything else that everyone does. So what is our goal? What can we try to raise is the first question we definitely want to answer with the process. Second, we want to say, how long will this campaign take to raise the money? What's our realistic time frame? Raising $5 million over a year versus 10 years are very, very different fundraising campaign goals. And even if say, great, we're going to wait 10 years and do the thing we want to do, build the building we want to build, how much we bring in on an annual basis does matter, as we know. So we want to also determine the time frame, because even 3 to 5 years difference in a campaign does make a huge difference on our income, our revenue. In campaign mode, we're going to raise 6 up to 10 times sometimes the amount that we would outside of it, but we can only do that if we can talk about it over a finite period of time. If we stretch those campaigns out to 8-10 years, people tend to lose interest, or they don't see the vision, saying, well, I can donate to you, and maybe 8 to 10 years from now something will happen, but that feels like so far away to me that I'd rather just donate to another charity that can do something in the next 18 to 24, 36 months, kind of in that range. So we want to try to nail, hey, here's what the first year looks like, silent phase. Here's what the bulk of the campaign is. Here's how long the wrap up is. And this is what can all work for that. Number 3, what are, or who are rather, our lead gift donors, and how much will they likely give to the project? So great to be able to talk about, oh, we found all these people who can do it. But if we can't by name go through and identify a bunch of people who are able to give in these various giving ranges and be our prospects for our pyramid of giving, we can't say with good confidence or with assuredness that we can raise this money. But if we can identify actual individuals, either by talking to them personally, that's why it's great to be able to interview donors themselves, or prospective donors, or past donors, whatever you want to, whatever category they fall into. We do want to make sure that we're identifying actual people saying, hey, I know John, or John and Sally Smith, or whatever, have the ability to give at least at the 6-figure level. They love the organization. When we asked about the charity specifically and this project, they said they'd be excited about it. There's some confidentiality we have to be a little bit careful of, as we're doing these interviews and being able to do that. But we can walk away with some pretty specific, like, hey, best not to talk to John and Sally about a gift, but if you can get their friend to serve on a committee, or if they're on the board, they can make that introduction for us, and we can make that ask pretty easily. So making that long list, or even medium-sized list of major gift prospects, and kind of where we guess they're going to fall based on their overall wealth accumulation and also just affinity for the project. The last component being, of course, can we get to them by a degree of separation or two? So next, who are our best prospects for volunteers to support the operations? One of the best things that are asked in any assessment is, hey, here's kind of what the next couple of years is going to look like. If the board approves this, we probably will go forth and raise about this much money to do some of the following things. Would you be interested in serving on a volunteer basis, a couple hours a month to help with that? Not necessarily even asking for money. It might be identifying people. It might be telling your story. Is that something you'd be interested in doing? And people will self-identify and say, yes, not only am I interested, but you can use my name so that when y'all start recruiting for this project, you can come back to me, or me and my family, me and my husband, my wife, my partner, whomever, to kind of move forward with this. So we want to get a big list of prospects for gifts, and we want to get a big list of volunteers to build out our volunteer teams. Obviously, there's going to be some crossover. Some people will say one or both. Some people will say neither, but we get a good sorted list, can actually identify people by name, and they can also identify others, because the follow-up question after that is, who else would be a good fit for something like this? Anyone you know in town, or anyone you're connected to that might also do a nice job or be excited about this project? And we can get a handful more names, especially the people who are well connected and social and kind of be that extroverted type, tend to have a bunch of names they can drop and say, yeah, when you start, come back to me. I can help you get in the door with some of these people as well. So great to get that list. The next is, how do we structure our campaign in terms of time and resources? So we're looking at both. How are we putting our volunteer teams in place? How often are we meeting? Which volunteer teams are we going to have? What are their kind of goals, overall structure? How do we structure the giving clubs? Kind of the mechanics and the how. Usually we're trying to recommend within a framework that already exists, and not say, hey, this campaign is going to be great. You got to hire 10 staff. They'll run it for you. No problem. We want to try to build that framework with our existing staff teams, with our existing board leadership, and then bring on additional fundraising volunteers to help with that effort. Also, how do we pace it out? Is it the case that everyone knows the organization really well? They're very familiar with the project. We're probably ready to launch publicly in 6 to 12 months, realistically. If it's a brand new organization, or maybe we haven't fundraised in a long time, or we've never fundraised at this scale before, it might be more like 12 to 18 months. But that's something we can determine very quickly just by talking to people and going through the assessment process. So it really helps get our campaign structure in place so that we know before we even start, we're ready to go in terms of the optimized way of going about things. All right. And lastly, what are the critical components for our case for support? Case for support, as I'm sure many of you are familiar, it's just the why would we give to this organization? What does it specifically accomplish? These can be packets, they can be brochures. We love to start with a simple one page. If I'm a donor, I've never heard of the charity or the project, I can in 90 seconds figure out what they're trying to raise, how they're going to spend it, and what specific outcomes or changes will result from that spending, from that money raised. Also, maybe some time frame as well. Like, hey, here's the status quo. Here's the change we're trying to enact. With that change, here's the new reality that our community will have as a result of being able to raise this money. Here's how you can help. We hope you consider a gift of, and you can go from there. So you don't really want to hide behind these materials necessarily, but it gives us a great summary so that as your volunteers, your fundraising team, and your leadership are talking about the campaign, everybody's on the same page about the how and the why and the mechanics and the plan. So we really want to nail that case for support, find those projects that not only are the leadership team and board excited about funding and building and growing, but also the projects that the community is excited about supporting. There might be a list of 10 things that leadership would love to spend money on, and there might be a list of 10 things that the community is very willing to give to and give big to. Our job in this process is to find out what's on both lists. What can we go through and say, okay, well, there's really 3 that overlap really well. And just by talking to people, by doing surveys, and just kind of doing our outreach efforts, we've identified here are some priorities from the organization. And here are some exciting things that donors would give to. We recommend centering your campaign around in that space so that we can do both. All right. Oh, there's actually one more. What projects and initiatives is our donor base willing to support financially? It's kind of tied into what the last one is. We can test specific projects to say, hey, we have these 10 initiatives. Can you just ask people, well, which of these seem like they are important? If you ask someone what they think other people will think, they'll usually tell you what they think. If I say, hey, which of these do you think people would give to? What they'll tell you is what they'll give to, which gives you great indication of what we're doing. So with that, we can go on to the next slide. Just a couple things to keep in mind before we wrap up and take any questions. It's important to listen to the response you get because people will tell you what they will and why they will support it. So we're asking these kind of boilerplate seeming questions, and we work with the staff teams obviously to figure out what questions exactly we're going to dial in and use. But you can tell in the way that people respond and just their tone and some of the extra context they provide. You can learn pretty quickly, especially if you've been doing it a while, if they are excited about this project, if they feel like it's necessary, if they have this kind of, oh my gosh, finally, we really have wanted to do this for so long. I'm glad they're finally undertaking this. Or I had no idea this was such an issue in our community. I'm glad that someone's addressing it. Or if they go, yeah, they kind of hem and haw a little bit, even if they're giving the information, how reluctantly or how excited they are gives us great context as how they will actually present that information and then what we can do from there. Feasibility studies can alter an organization's expected course of action. So be prepared to pivot. Say you have a couple of projects, the leadership team is like, this is it. These are the ways we're going to spend the money. We want to raise $10 million to do X, Y, Z. We know this is important. And we come back and we test for those things. And the organization goes, or the community goes, not so much. We're much more interested in this area. And we can say, hey, you can try to raise $10 million for this, but just based on talking to your donor base, they are not going to give big in that area. What they are excited about are these things. So if you can shift some money around, maybe you accomplish everything. But if you want to raise something in the $10 million range, it really needs to be more around this space. And this is not us, guessing at it. This is just literally having talked to the people who are going to fund this project privately. This is where we think you should be. So, project focus may shift, and the previously unidentified prospects may surface in support of the new initiative. We have all the time, staffs will say, well, yeah, you can talk to Jerry, but Jerry's not going to give anything. Jared never gives us a dime. We know he's got money, but he's always so stingy. And then we talk to Jerry, and Jerry goes, actually, if y'all were to do something like this in this space, I'd be happy to probably increase my giving, or I think I could really look at doing something or naming something in this space. So you have kind of surprises on both ends, depending on what you're doing, and you'll never uncover them unless you can give your donors and your prospects some opportunity to talk about your organization for 30, 40 minutes confidentially, saying, yes, I can share my information without it being directly tied back to me. So really, really helpful thing there. All right, final keys to success. First one, invest time and resources up front to ensure campaign success. The tendency is to say, we really want to launch right into this campaign right away. We don't want to do a study. We don't want to figure out exactly where we're going before we do that. You might get revenue in the door faster. Just say, hey, this is the campaign. We're picking a goal. We think we can raise 6. It's kind of close to what we raised in the past. Here's exactly what we're doing. That may result in more short-term revenue. In those first 3 months, you probably will get more dollars in the door, especially if you're hurting for cash. But in the long run, for the campaign as a whole, you will probably raise less by not dialing in exactly what your community thinks you should be raising money for. Or even worse, you get the goal wrong or you get the project wrong. Say you aim for $10 million and you raise 6. Raising $6 million is amazing. That's an incredible amount of change you can enact in your community. But if you set this big public goal at 10, everybody feels like you failed, even though you just raised $6 million for your cause. So you aim that goal too high, everybody feels defeated. We're not going to come back to help for more. You go the other way, say you set the goal at $5 million, it really should be at 10, or you have the ability to raise 10, you didn't even know, you now can't ask for bigger gifts. For a $5 million campaign, there's no way you can make a $5 million ask or even a $2 million ask. It's too much of the overall percentage. But say you're raising and you set the goal at 20, it's pretty easy to talk to a foundation or a single donor or a business about a multi-million-dollar gift because they see that overall need. So setting the goal too low may seem safe and easy and what could go wrong. What it does is it boxes you out of your top line of giving. If you're preparing a grant even for a large foundation, for a government grant, if you can't demonstrate you need $20 million and that your community is going to step up and do part of that, there's no way they're going to award you a grant for $5 million. So really setting that goal and being specific, demonstrating to your donor base that you've done your homework really does result in long-term success. It will delay your income 60 to 90 days, but if you can look a year or multiple years down the line, it's multiple times more income oftentimes if you can set it up and get all the plan in place, get your roadmap, and be sure that you're going to be successful with that campaign instead of guessing. All right. Asking the right questions and engaging the right people. We can certainly be helpful for the what questions to ask and what to say. We have kind of our set, and then we can kind of work to expand from there. But really, it's about identifying what the project is, what kind of things people would support, how much they'll support, can they get names for us for both gifts and for prospects. So to really focus on those things, especially if you have someone who's a little bit long-winded and they're going to talk a lot, we're not going to get to 17 questions, but we'll make sure that we hit those 3 or 4 that are so important, and then fill in the rest of the information with the other interviewees who don't have as long-winded of an answer typically. And engaging the right people is key. We say the most important part of the study always is that upfront, can we identify names that are in the list and that say these people actually are donors, they're actually board members. We don't want to just get 40, 50, 60, just any old people on the list. We want to make sure that the right people, they are our donors, they are our constituents, they are our supporters, and we're working through and actually doing that. Engaging your constituents early in the process, the classic age-old saying, if you want money, ask for advice. If you want advice, ask for money. We're starting by asking for advice. If we're engaging them in the process and they feel like they were part of the decision to launch the campaign, their likelihood to give a gift is tremendously higher. They're like, oh yeah, I remember we talked about this. This was actually the project that I suggested that they undertake, and they did. Now I feel like I have to kind of pony up a little bit. It's like, that's great. That's what we want. We want to have them feel like they were kind of on the ground floor, the decision-making, their opinion is important. People love to share their own opinions. This is why we have the Pride Virtual Forum. We think our opinion is very important. We have a platform for that. Everybody loves to share their opinions. So if you give them a platform to do that, they're much more likely to help you. All right. And lastly, listen to your constituents and keep them informed along the way. So the best thing you can do is use that feasibility study or that assessment as part of the cultivation process. If you can have that meeting and maybe a follow-up meeting with the staff somewhere in there, you're probably only one, if any, meetings away from being able to actually ask for a gift. So if you contact a donor out of the blue after not having spoken to them in years, it may not be appropriate to ask for a bunch of money right then and there. But if they got a phone call from you and a letter, and then they sat down and did a feasibility study interview, and then you followed up to kind of give them the results, then you sit down with them, they really feel like they're part of the fold, they're part of the process. You don't have to have 3 cultivation meetings. You can have this built-in cultivation process where they've been getting information and sharing their opinion and being all a part of it, so they're much more likely to give at that time. And make sure you follow up and follow through. The best people you have for gifts and for volunteers are those ones who agreed to meet with you and do the interview. If you've got 40 people who have either self-identified or just at least agreed to show up, it's likely you can get down and sit with them and actually ask them for a gift or ask them for their time or engage with them in some way because they've already agreed to participate in some way. They feel like they have a little bit of a vested interest. So a lot of times we like to talk to all these people and then say, okay, well, go find some donors now. It's like, well, let's look at this list of people we just generated and spent a bunch of time and effort cultivating and getting a part of the process. Can we engage them first? Are there any big gifts in this group? And then we'll move on to the rest of the community. And the classic, if you plan to fail, or if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. This is just a great way of setting the perfect roadmap for your campaign multi-year, or even refreshing your campaign halfway through if you feel stuck. It's a great way to kind of get your ducks in a row, make sure that you're doing all the right things. You're optimizing your time, you're optimizing your team, and you're optimizing your goal. With that, we will certainly take any questions. All right. Well, I will turn it back over to Marty to wrap us up and get us out of here.
Thank you, Jake. Thank you all so much for joining us today. If questions arise, you all know how to get in touch with us. Hopefully we answered at least a few questions you had through the process along the way. Want to bring your attention to a few of our upcoming educational opportunities. If you're already not following us on LinkedIn, be sure to do so. We've got the QR code there as well as